Work incredibly hard, display your brilliance, and success will follow. It seems like the most logical path to the top. But in the real world, human psychology violently disrupts that equation. When you make a point of showing off your competence, you inadvertently highlight the fallibility of the people managing you. Robert Greene codified this phenomenon in his book, The 48 Laws of Power. Law number 1 states it plainly: never outshine the master. If you only focus on your own output, you are missing the actual game. Pure competence, deployed without a deep awareness of the egos positioned above you, is a trap. Take the case of Nicolas Fouquet. In 17th century France, he was the superintendent of finances under King Louis XIV. He was sharp, indispensable, and staggeringly wealthy. When the prime minister died, Fouquet saw an opening. To prove his worth and secure the top job, he decided to throw the most spectacular party the country had ever seen, intending to dazzle his boss. He succeeded in throwing an incredible party, but instead of a promotion, the display cost him his freedom for life. The relationship between Fouquet and the young king was incredibly fragile. Following the death of the previous chief minister, Cardinal Mazarin, the tension in the court began to peak. Fouquet was the man keeping the royal finances afloat. He possessed incredible charm and a highly cultivated manner, but he also had an ambition that he made very little effort to hide. This was a dangerous combination to bring before Louis XIV. The young monarch was arrogant and demanded absolute, undivided attention from his subjects, masking a deep insecurity about his own authority. This image shows the massive, luxurious estate of Val-le-Vicomte. Fouquet poured enormous sums of money into building the chateau to showcase his exquisite taste and vast wealth. Fouquet assumed that offering up this masterpiece would prove his value to the crown. He completely ignored the fragile ego of the man who actually held the power. On August 17, 1661, Fouquet hosted the king. The guest list enjoyed premieres of Molière plays, massive fireworks displays, and meals served on solid gold plates. In Fouquet's mind, he was putting on a masterclass. He thought he was proving his high value, his extensive network of connections, and his absolute loyalty to the crown. But Louis felt entirely different. Looking at the gold plates and the sprawling gardens, the king felt impoverished by comparison, outdone in lavishness, and threatened by his own finance minister. As the night went on, the guests bestowed appreciative smiles and attention on Fouquet. To Louis, every single compliment paid to his subordinate felt like a direct insult to his own vanity. The superior must always feel superior. When a subordinate outshines them, it violates the basic contract of the hierarchy. Fouquet was blinded by his own excellence. He didn't realize that his spectacular party was, in reality, an unintentional declaration of war against the king's alpha status. The fallout was swift. Driven by a bruised ego and deep jealousy, Louis secretly began plotting with a rival minister, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, to completely destroy Fouquet. They manipulated Fouquet into selling his legal office, stripping him of his immunity from prosecution. Shortly after, he was arrested, charged, and eventually sentenced to life in a heavily guarded prison. But Louis didn't stop at removing the man. He immediately hired Fouquet's exact architects, garden designers, and decorators for his own projects. Using those talents, Louis built the Palace of Versailles. He created a permanent, overwhelming monument designed to ensure no subject would ever be capable of outdoing him again. Fouquet's arrest had very little to do with actual financial crimes. It was a brutal mechanism for restoring the psychological balance of power that Fouquet had upset. Absolute monarchs might be a thing of the past, but the psychological dynamics of organizational hierarchies have not changed. This academic paper on power dynamics details how formal frameworks require subordinates to acknowledge the leadership as legitimate. When you aggressively flaunt your autonomy and brilliance, you disrupt the necessary consensus of supervision. You make the person in charge feel like they're losing control. In a modern corporate setting, that kind of hubris creates silent enemies. A threatened boss won't usually admit their insecurity. They will simply wait for a convenient excuse to torpedo your success. True power requires the absolute discipline to mask your brilliance when necessary. If you can't control the urge to show off, you will eventually be destroyed by the ego of the people above you.